What did you take away from the Patriots draft?
That there were clear and obvious holes that have arisen over the course of the last 3 or 4 years that went unfilled. And the Patriots said, you know what? Even though Elliott Wolf said last week that, we don't need to draft for need, we need to draft for depth. They obviously drafted for need time and time and time again. And when you have the worst offense in football by a lot of measures, that's what you're supposed to do. Fix the offense. And they struck out in free agency, so I was waiting for some contact, and I think they made a fair amount.
Yeah, they did the smart thing by drafting the quarterback at 3 overall and then continued to fill around that quarterback to try to help nurture the guy, try to create an environment in which he's going to grow and become the player you want him to be. Do you still have a sure thing at left tackle? No, you don't. Do you have a sure thing at a #1 receiver right now on that roster? No, you don't. But you're adding pieces, Trenni, and these pieces, I think, several of them could contribute and contribute pretty soon here on this Patriots offensive roster.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I, watch a lot of college football and know the ins and the outs of each player taken. With you, Curran, I'm with you. I liked that they addressed needs and they weren't like, let's take a kicker, let's take a punter, let's take an offensive guard no one's heard of. The actual picks, though, Phil, how do you feel about the actual players? It's one thing to take from positions of need, but do they take good players at those positions?
Let's look at the receivers, right? I like the receivers that they drafted, and I like them in part because I think they fit really well with what Drake May apparently does well, right? This is based off of his college tape, and we'll see what he becomes as a pro. But 2 things we knew about Drake May at North Carolina. He threw the ball down the field really effectively, and he attacked the middle of the field unlike any other quarterback in this year's draft class. And your middle of the field guy is now Jalen Polk. That's a guy who's going to do all the dirty work. He's not afraid to go over the middle and take a hit, try to break a tackle. He's going to block. He is Jacoby Myers or Tyler Boyd. Those are 2 names that were given to me by NFL people as good comps for Jalen Polk. Not a game breaker by any stretch, but he's going to do that stuff over the middle for Drake May. And then Javon Baker, Tom, could be your deep threat. We'll see what he turns into, but that's what he was great at in the college ranks. So I just like the marriage of these 3 players together and the ability that they'll have to grow together as young guys.
And productive. The fact that they weren't projections, both of them combined, I think, had 2,300 yards in 2023. They had 16 touchdowns. They had about 120 catches combined at different schools. Polk was a 16.9 yards per catch guy. Baker was 21.9. Those are astronomical numbers that will certainly come down, and some of it's fed by yards after the catch. But I think Phil's exactly right. If you have a quarterback who is Metza and hopefully improving as an underneath thrower, but certainly loves to go deep and showed it time and time again, give him guys who are adept at winning 50-50 balls. They're not burners. You could sit there and say, well, A.D. Mitchell was there, and he seems to be an X. But if the Patriots took A.D. Mitchell, then we'd be listening to all the things that the Indianapolis Colts are listening to when they took him at 52. Well, doesn't he have character concerns? The Patriots went with what I consider to be singles and doubles. They have their home run swing with Drake May. That, to me, means, okay, we did something for that position. Let's support it kind of in a way that they didn't support it in 2023 with Mac Jones in terms of no tight end, no left tackle, and really no wide receivers except for Juju. They took away a receiver last year.
Well, it seems like they did get some moxie in a player. Javon Baker, here's what he had to say about what fans can expect from him.
Hey, just come to the home stadium and bring out popcorn. That's all I can tell y'all. Bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up.
Okay, we talked about the receivers the Patriots did draft. What about the receivers the Patriots could have had? Multiple reports saying the Patriots tried to trade up at the end of the first round to draft either Xavier Legette or Keon Coleman. The Patriots traded out of 34 with the Chargers, who ended up drafting wideout Ladd McConkey. One other name people were clamoring for, Curran, you just mentioned, A.D. Mitchell, who fell to the Colts at 52 due to those character concerns. So are you going to be looking back at any of these guys and going, oh, man, maybe we missed on that?
Receiver's an easy place to do that because it's a fantasy place. It's a fantasy football, something people will zero in on. But, again, receivers are byproducts of quarterbacks, which are byproducts of offensive line. So it's not always going to be apples to apples, but certainly I think we did that with N'Keal Harry, and we'll forever do that with N'Keal Harry. He goes 32nd overall, and then there's this just absolute glut of receivers who you can compare to. But I look at that again and say Troy Franklin and Roman Wilson are guys who would jump out. Roman Wilson, I thought, was kind of underrated, and I'm surprised he went as late as he did.
Yeah, because when I hear you say N'Keal Harry, like, I think the comparison there is because N'Keal Harry was such a bust. I mean, but even if these guys turn out to be decent, is there a chance that you still look back with envy? Or are they safe enough picks but good enough to fit into the system that it'll be all right?
Let me lob this to Phil. Use another guy more recent than N'Keal and Tyquan Thornton. That's a fifth-round guy projected who they took in the second who just can't deliver.
Well, and with Tyquan Thornton, they actually traded up to make sure that they got him, so it's a little bit different than this situation. N'Keal Harry, he was the first of a group of guys that ended up going in the second round after him that ended up being much better players. So this is a little bit different. I said I liked both Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I liked them. I would have loved Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette, to me, has the upside to be a legit #1 receiver. It's 6'1", 220 pounds, runs a 4.3. And Mike Reese reported over the weekend that they tried to trade into the back end of the first round. I wouldn't be stunned if it was for Legette, and he would have given you a little bit more upside as opposed to, again, the safer player, the single or the double in Jalen Polk, and later Javon Baker. So that's one big picture critique that I have is, could you have done a little bit more in terms of trading up into the back half or back end of the first round and making sure that you nabbed that guy that you really wanted? Because they ended up with Polk, who between, I think, picks 28 and 37, I think they're about a half a dozen receivers, and he was the last one. Then A.D. Mitchell, as we pointed out, went all the way down to 52. Is another 15 picks before another receiver was off the board. So that's, to me, do you get aggressive and really get the guy? How aggressive did they try to be? I can tell you, I know the Chiefs were surprised at how little they had to give up to go from 32 to 28 with Buffalo.
Yeah, and I don't have to tell Phil this, but I think that how impassioned are these teams who were looking at after Xavier Worthy went, how impassioned were they about moving down? I mean, if you're in line and you have a crap team, the Patriots earned their third overall pick. They earned a 4-13 record, so they were a bad team. Do you start packaging those fourth-round picks that turned out to be Javon Baker and the guard that they took as well, Layden
Robinson?
Thank you. Then you are in a situation where you're giving up resources to move up a couple, and you can say, all right, well, Xavier might be a triple, but we're going to get a stand-up double out of Jalen.
Speaking of, you mentioned an offensive lineman there. Have they gotten any closer to solving their left tackle situation?
Closer, I would think, because you've thrown another body at it, and it's an experienced body from the Big Ten, but Phil, I'll defer.
He's not experienced left tackle. That's the problem. He played right tackle at Penn State, and they believe that he has the ability to make that transition, but we'll see. You know, they have a handful of guys now, whether it's Chuck Secorifor or Caden Wallace or Gerard Mayo even mentioned at the owners' meetings, Tom, you were down there, about Mike Owenu going over to the left side. That might end up being their best five, as maybe Caden Wallace ends up on the right side and Mike Owenu ends up on the left. So that's another, again, could you have been a little more aggressive? Kingsley Suamataia. I've said his name on this air many times over the course, and I'll say it one more time. Kingsley Suamataia. That might be the last time I say it here. But he's at the bottom of the second round, and about 4 picks later, you end up taking Caden Wallace. Could you have done something to get back up there to make sure you got a guy who at least has experience playing left tackle? Looks like he has the physical ability to play that side.
Is this something that you can coach up for this year, and then maybe you try to hit a home run and get a true left tackle next year? I know that's kicking the can down, but you had to push something into the future.
Well, there is, but you're going to have expiring contracts at other positions as well. Matthew Judon, for instance, an edge guy. You know, the Patriots going to be in the top half of the draft in 2024? I would guess so. Yeah. I mean, I would project them best case scenario 5 or 6 or 7 wins. You know, probably not an 8-win team. So they'll probably be in the top dozen picks. And that being the case, you might have to address edge. You might have to address left tackle. But I do think it's interesting when we look at the wideouts, when we look at the guards that they brought in, there is certainly these guys are on borrowed time, whether it be Cole Strange or Tyquan Thornton or Juju, for instance.